Hello and welcome to our English edition, The Major Stories. President Obiang's departure after the signing of bilateral agreements. In Gaza, 40 Palestinians were killed since the start of the return march. Thank you for joining us in our newsroom. The President of Equatorial Guinea, Mr. Teodoro Obiang Nguema, left the capital, Djibouti, this morning to return to Malabo at the end of his two-day official visit in the Republic of Djibouti at the invitation of President Ismail Omar Guelleh. The visit enabled the two countries to sign several cooperation agreements and lay the foundations for a closer relationship between the two friendly people in the two countries. President Obiang welcomed during his stay the quality of the reception he received as well as his delegation. And shortly before his departure, President Obiang paid a visit today to the submarine telecommunication cable station at Hormuz. During his trip to the submarine cable landing station, Mr. Obiang was accompanied by the Minister of Health, Dr. Jamal Milki, and the Minister of Communication, Abdi Yusuf Suge. Welcomed by the main officials of this center, the Guinean delegation was given a presentation on the various advantages offered by these information highways in communication. These cables connect Europe to Asia via Djibouti and connect several countries in the sub-region. The guided visit to the site has allowed President Obiang and his entourage to appreciate the efforts made by Djibouti in this area and that allow him to an important hub of interconnection in this world driven by the new technologies of communication and some information. The diverse advantage in telecommunication infrastructure of the country. Last night, President Obiang and his delegation have a reception at the Kempinski Palace Hotel on the occasion of the visit of the President of Equatorial Guinea, Teodoro Obiang, to Djibouti for a three-day official visit. A screening presentation was made last night at the Kempinski Hotel by the Djiboutian authorities on the main economic assets of the Republic of Djibouti. The President of Equatorial Guinea, Mr. Teodoro Obiang, and the entire delegation accompanying him attended the meeting hosted by President of the Ports and Free Zones Authorities, Mr. Abubakar Omar Hadi, in the presence of the Djibouti Minister of Health, Dr. Jamal Milki. The Guinean President has welcomed the unspeakable that has been reserved for him. Welcome has been reserved for him and his delegation.
واسمي العيان جيبوتي.
Obituary, it was with immeasurable sadness that we learned with the loss of our elected colleague of the people, Qadir Elmi Afesi, who has taken place today, 23 April 2018 in Turkey. No word or compassion can match our pain, and especially that of his family. Second Deputy Mayor at the Djibouti City Hall and President of the Rastika Qadir Annex Elmi Afesi distinguished himself by his great sense of civic duty by constantly listening to his compatriots. The Prime Minister has also sent his deepest condolences to the family and friends of the deceased. The Mayor of Djibouti City and all his elected presents their condolences to the family of the deceased. They may pray to Allah to welcome him in his eternal paradise. May Allah grant him his eternal paradise. It was under the patronage of the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mohammed Ali Hamid, held a ceremonial opening session of Parliament for its first regular session of 2018. The official ceremony was attended by the Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, national elected officials, the members of the government, diplomatic representatives and UN agencies, prefects, local and customary authorities. A highlight of the day, the speeches of the President of the National Assembly and the Prime Minister launched the course of this plenary session, which saw in its prologue an official reception offered by the national representation. In his speech, President Mohammed Ali Hamid recalled the importance of this event. In addition, the head of the National Assembly gave a brief presentation of the country's economic situation, respect for and preservation of democracy and human rights since the accession to the Supreme Office of President Ismail Marghelli. He said in his speech, today there is no need to demonstrate the great positive changes initiated by the Republic of Djibouti and the answers it has given to the challenges of its time, to the challenges of the cruelties of an increasingly globalized world. Always pure in mind, he said that you and I are the holders of a public power given to us by the whole nation. This is a mandate of trust and transparency that the people gave us. Our vigilance, our commitment and our determination will be indispensable to accompany the government in these prerogatives. Moreover, by our responsibility, our involvement in our self-sacrifice, we must always report regularly to our elected officials and take into account their questions and their needs. The Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed has during this ceremonial meeting made a speech and presented to the public the fundamental lines of the policy defined by the head of state, His Excellency Ismail Marghelli. In the first place, he requested from the Parliament a minute of silence in memory of the late Barakat Mohamedou. May he rest in peace, said the Prime Minister. He expressed his compliments for their election and their commitment during the election campaign. On behalf of the government, I also wish to congratulate the entire population for the exemplary maturity they have shown in this election, he said. The Prime Minister has then highlighted this great democratic advance represented by the important participation of women in this assembly. He said that I would like to draw everyone's attention to what I consider to be the greatest achievement of President Ismail Marghelli, has continued the Prime Minister. It is not a large monument or a large work easily visible, more important than our unity achieved at our independence. This is the inking in the population of a deep national feeling. Today, all Djiboutians want to defend the nation against all attacks, whether they are internal mounted by extremists or external. They want to preserve what has been done for them and their children. They want to protect their country. This is definitely rooted in us, thanks to the President of the Republic, who also acts in presidential decisions underpin this desire to have a strong nation able to withstand all hardships. Under the presidency of Mr. Mohammed Ali Hamid, the Conference of Presidents of the National Assembly was held this Monday in the premises of the Parliament. At this conference, the government was represented by the Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed and the Minister of Defense for Relations with the Parliament, His Excellency Ali Hassan Badon. Also participating in this meeting were the two Vice Presidents of the National Representation, the members of the Bureau, the Chief of the Staff, the Chairman of the Standing Committees and Parliamentary Groups, and the General Reporter of the Budget. The Conference of Presidents has dealt, first of all, with the transmission to the appropriate standing committee of pending bills, which number 3, namely Bill number 7, ratifying the framework agreement establishing the International Solar Alliance, tabled in Parliament on 8 April 2018. And referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs. And Bill number 8, establishing the Real Estate and Land Development Company, tabled in Parliament on 17 April and referred to the Committee on Legislation and General Administration. And finally, Bill number 9, establishing the Urban Rehabilitation and Social Housing Agency, tabled in Parliament on 17 April and referred to the Committee on the Legislation and the General Administration. The President of the Assembly also indicated that the Law Commission could transmit the texts of the laws in question to the Commission for Social Development and Environmental Protection. This morning, under the leadership of the Interior Minister Hassan Omar Mohamed, a consultation meeting between the Disaster Management Risk Executive Secretariat technicians and the Mutual Capacity Risk, which is a UN agency of the African Union, has placed at the People's Palace. This meeting was attended by several senior officials of the public administration, namely the Secretary General of the Ministry of Budget, the Director of Honors, Director of Agriculture, representative of different regions of the interior. The aim was to find a common point with the Mutual Capacity Risk, which is responsible for risk management at the level of the African Union. In his intervention, the managers of Mutual Risk Capacity clarified the need to work in consultation with the Executive Secretary of Risk and Disaster Management in each country in order to find and assess the real need of each locality. And in his speech, the Minister of Interior Hassan Omar Mohamed welcomed the delegation of Mutual Risk Capacity, which is a UN agency of the African Union, and will have to evaluate and work with the executives, he said, the Secretary of Risk Management and Disasters in the Republic of Djibouti. Other news of this edition: the Minister of Transport and Equipment, Mr. Mohamed Abdul Qadir Hilim, received yesterday afternoon in the meeting room of the Department a trade mission of South Africa, including the grouping of industries of engineering and technology, accompanied by the Ambassador of South Africa accredited to Djibouti and residing in Addis Ababa. This delegation includes CEOs of the largest South African companies and has had discussions with the Minister of Transport and Equipment, Mr. Mohamed Abdul Qadir Hilim, the senior executives of the department, and in particular the General Manager of the Company of the Railways of Djibouti, Mr. Mahmoud Robley. Pursuing its working visit to Washington, the MENFOB delegation meets Mr. Asad Alam, Director of the Middle East and North Africa region, on the day of Wednesday, April 18. Exchanges between the MENFOB and the GPE patron are mainly concerned with common concerns inherent in the new global education objective, which allows all access to inclusive, equitable and quality education in the 2030 period. Mr. Mustafa Mohammed recalled the first moment of the educational Djiboutian system, who in 2000, since the birth of the new school, compulsory until 16 years, free and accessible to all the Djiboutians by its foundation, offer education. The day closed by a plenary meeting with the Vice President of the World Bank, Hafiz Ghanem, in which both parties welcomed their successful collaboration. The development of the National Strategy, or ICT strategy, has made the exchange between the delegation of the MENFOB and Mr. Mike Turkino, expert in information and communication technology. A workshop of the Operational Director of Trades and Jobs took place this morning at the Sheraton Hotel. This workshop was chaired by the Minister of Labor in charge of the Administration Reform, Hassan Idris Semirri. The ROM process is based on an analysis of the literature, a review on the use of interviews, and observation of work situations. This workshop was attended by representative of the Japanese Embassy, of UNDP resident representative, and representative of concerned parties. Indeed, this study, commissioned by the UNDP in the framework of the project of support to employment, has been financed by the Japanese government and carried out by a national expert. The representative of the Japanese ambassador recalled that this workshop is part of the youth employment support project run by UNDP in collaboration with many actors, including the private sector. The Minister of Labor in charge of the reform of the administration, Hassan Idris Semirri, has in an intervention mentioned that this workshop will be the opportunity to recognize the skills of the professionals and to measure their evaluation. A large delegation of youth in the Commission of Sports Ministers from member countries led by the Secretary of State for Youth and Sports Hassan Mohammed Kamil went to Tajora, the White City. Upon arrival, the delegation is welcomed by the local authorities, in this case the Vice President of the Regional Council Abdul Omar and the Prefect of the region Mr. Abdul Malik Mohammed Bonaita, who gave them a brief presentation on the history, social, cultural and economic aspects of the White City. The members of the host ministerial delegation expressed their satisfaction with this warm welcome and indulging in this opportunity to contemplate this magical landscape. They welcomed these pleasant moments passed with all the courtesy of the Secretary of State Hassan Mohammed Kamil. And thereafter, the President of the Ministerial Council of the Commission thanked the Secretary of State Hassan Kamil, who organized this visit in the White City of Tajora.
De Djibouti d'avoir.
And sports now, the third day of the competition is in full swing in the Goulet Stadium. Many disciplines were played by the players and more in these images. The Roble Alale family is informing the loss of their daughter Naima Roble Alale since 4 days. She has a mental problem, and for the last time she was seen taking the Ali Sabih bus. It is requested to people who find it to contact the following numbers: 7768 93 60. I repeat, 7768 93 60. And now moving on to the news outside our borders. In Gaza, 40 Palestinians were killed since the start of the return march. More with Hindi Ibrahim.
Palestinians are protesting in southern Gaza Strip in a 6-week campaign called the Great Return March against Israeli settlements on former Palestinian territory. Another mass protest last Friday turned deadly with at least 18 killed and hundreds wounded.
Consecutive days of strike at Air France and SNCF. 75% of the flights should be insured, while the NCF provides for the circulation of one of the TGV out of the 3.
Striking French rail workers disturbed train service for the 9th day this month on Monday, turning a day here to the centrist government's instance that the state-run CNCF and other neglected public services are in need of reform. The rolling strikes, which coincided with a walkout at flag carrier Air France, over which on Monday are the strenuous challenge yet faced by President Emmanuel Macron, who embarks on a state visit to the United States later in the day. For the first time during this season of employees, unrest strike action by rail workers is set to overlap with labor disruption at Air France on 2 consecutive days.
And this is it for this edition. Thank you for being with us.